And that breaking news tonight, the Supreme Court says a death row inmate's execution cannot go forward using nitrogen hypoxia.
Jeffrey Lee was set to have his sentence carried out tonight, but now Governor Kay Ivey's office says it will be rescheduled to a future date. After 8 o'clock this evening, the highest court in the land denied a stay on an injunction filed by the state, meaning a federal judge's ruling blocking nitrogen hypoxia in this case stands. Governor Ivey says while she's disappointed the courts won't allow his chosen method of execution, she is committed to ensuring justice is served for the victims. We've also gotten a statement from Reverend Dr. Jeff Hood, who has been pushing against Lee's execution this week. He calls tonight's ruling the beginning of the end of, quote, the most horrific execution method this country has ever devised. He goes on to say the fight to end nitrogen hypoxia is not over, and he won't rest until this ruling catches up with all of the potential executions using this method.
On June 11th, 2026, Jeffrey Lee was supposed to die. His execution chamber was ready. His death warrant had been signed. The state of Alabama had scheduled his execution using nitrogen hypoxia, one of the most controversial execution methods in America. After more than 25 years on death row, everything pointed toward his final day. But then something happened. A federal judge intervened. The execution was stopped, and a man convicted of murdering 2 people inside an Alabama pawn shop remained alive. But this isn't just a story about a death row inmate. It's a story about a brutal double murder. A famous singer who once convinced thousands that Elvis Presley might still be alive. A surviving witness who escaped death by pretending to be dead. And a legal battle that continues to divide public opinion to this day. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the Execution Files and turn on notifications. We bring you real death row stories, execution cases, and criminal investigations from around the world. Now let's open today's case file. In December of 1998, Jeffrey Lee was only 21 years old. He had recently become a father. His son had been born just 2 months earlier. But according to court records, Jeffrey was already deeply involved in substance abuse. Alcohol, marijuana, cocaine. His life was spiraling out of control. On the night before the murders, he reportedly stayed awake drinking and using drugs for hours. By the time the sun rose on December 12th, he had been awake all night. What happened next would change multiple lives forever. The target of Jeffrey's crime wasn't just a business owner. His name was Ginny Ellis. And decades earlier, he had become a music industry sensation. Jimmy possessed an extraordinary talent. His voice sounded remarkably similar to Elvis Presley. So similar, in fact, that many listeners genuinely believed Elvis had somehow returned. Jimmy recorded music under the stage name Orion. He performed wearing a mask. The mystery generated enormous attention. Fans bought records and attended concerts, wondering whether the performer might secretly be Elvis himself. Eventually, Jimmy revealed his identity. The excitement faded, and after years in the music business, he returned home to Alabama. There he opened Jimmy's Pawn and Package Store. Working alongside him was his former wife, Elaine Thompson. Neither of them knew they would soon become victims of one of Alabama's most shocking crimes. On the morning of December 12th, Jeffrey arrived at the pawn shop, accompanied by his brother and cousin. Inside the store, he spoke with an employee named Helen King. Jeffrey asked to see several wedding rings. Helen showed him the jewelry. He looked carefully at the rings. Then he explained that he didn't have enough money. He said he needed to visit his grandmother to get cash. After thanking her, he left. At that moment, nobody inside the pawn shop had any reason to be suspicious. It seemed like an ordinary customer browsing merchandise, but it wasn't. After leaving the store, Jeffrey purchased alcohol. He drank heavily. He continued using drugs. Then, just a short time later, he returned. Only this time, he wasn't carrying money. He was carrying a sawed-off shotgun. Around noon, Jeffrey walked through the front entrance. A surveillance monitor near the door displayed a live camera feed. Anyone entering could see themselves being recorded. Jeffery saw the screen. Then he allegedly shouted a profane statement and opened fire. The first blast struck Jimmy Ellis. Then Jeffery turned toward Elaine Thompson. She was shot moments later. Helen King was next, the same woman who had politely shown him wedding rings earlier that day. The violence unfolded in seconds. Then Jeffery walked back toward Jimmy and fired again. The attack was devastating. 2 people died. 1 woman was left fighting for her life. Helen King understood something immediately. If she moved, she might die. So she stayed perfectly still. She didn't scream. She didn't attempt to escape. She pretended to be dead. That decision saved her life. After the shooting, Jeffery attempted to take the cash register, but he couldn't free it from the counter. Incredibly, he left money behind. He left jewelry behind. He even abandoned the shotgun. Then he walked out. Only after she was certain he was gone did Helen move. She called 911, locked the doors, and waited. But the nightmare wasn't over, because Jeffery came back. He returned to the pawn shop one more time. Fortunately, Helen had already locked the entrance. Unable to get inside, he eventually left. It was his 3rd visit to the same store in a single day, and every second had been captured on surveillance video. After leaving Alabama, Jeffery crossed state lines into Georgia. He checked into a motel, but investigators wouldn't have to search for long. His own relatives would play a major role in ending his freedom. After separating from Jeffery, his brother and cousin contacted law enforcement. They told authorities exactly what had happened. Armed with that information, officers tracked Jeffery to a motel room. At approximately 4:30 in the morning, police arrested him. The manhunt was over. Following his arrest, Jeffery signed a written confession. He admitted his involvement in the shootings. However, he claimed the first shot had been accidental. Investigators weren't convinced. The surveillance footage painted a different picture. Jurors would eventually see a sequence of events that appeared deliberate rather than accidental. The confession, combined with eyewitness testimony and video evidence, created a powerful case against him. As the legal process unfolded, details about Jeffery's upbringing emerged. His attorneys described a childhood marked by poverty, abuse, substance addiction, and personal struggles beginning at a very young age. The defense argued that years of trauma and substance abuse had contributed to his actions. But prosecutors focused on the victims, Jimmy Ellis, Elaine Thompson, and Helen King, who survived to tell the story. The trial moved quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury convicted Jeffery Lee of capital murder. Then came the sentencing phase, and that's where things became complicated. Possible punishments: death, or life imprisonment without parole. When voting concluded, the jury recommended life in prison. The vote was 7-5. Normally, that might have settled the matter, but Alabama law at the time allowed judges to override jury recommendations. The judge reviewed the case, rejected the jury's recommendation, and sentenced Jeffery Lee to death. That decision would become one of the most controversial aspects of the case. Years later, Alabama abolished judicial override entirely, but the change wasn't applied retroactively. Jeffery remained on death row. Over the next quarter-century, Jeffery's life changed dramatically. According to prison records and supporters, he became involved in religious programs. He mentored other inmates, worked closely with prison chaplains, and accumulated no violent disciplinary infractions. Some people viewed this as proof of rehabilitation. Others believed his actions inside prison could never erase what happened inside that pawn shop. The debate continued for years. Then, in 2026, Alabama scheduled his execution. It appeared the story was finally coming to an end. As June 11th approached, preparations were underway. But just one day before the execution, a federal judge intervened. The issue wasn't Jeffery's guilt, it was the method of execution. The court ruled that nitrogen hypoxia raised constitutional concerns. The decision halted the planned execution. The state appealed. The case reached higher courts. Yet the execution date passed. Jeffery remained alive. Death row had claimed another unexpected twist. Today, Jeffery Lee remains on Alabama's death row. His death sentence still stands, but no one knows exactly what the future holds. Meanwhile, the victims remain at the center of this story. Jimmy Ellis, the singer known as Orion, Elaine Thompson, and survivor Helen King, a woman whose quick thinking ensured the truth would never be forgotten. This case continues to raise difficult questions. Can a person truly change after decades in prison? Should rehabilitation matter in death penalty cases? And when a jury recommends life imprisonment, should a judge have the power to impose death instead? What do you think? Has justice been served? Or should Jeffery Lee's sentence be reconsidered? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this case file, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for the execution files. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next case file.